What is up? Welcome to this Facebook Live here. Closing off the end of my kickoff celebration for my circle training. Welcome to all who are joining live, to all who are joining at a later date across space and time. My name's Liz, and I'm joining you from the Bronx in New York City. And I just want to take a moment to honor the Lenape people as I call upon the land, as I acknowledge the land that I'm on. And again, want to welcome you to my home here. And thank you for joining along and checking out just some of the videos that I've been putting out this week. It means a lot. And so the intention with today's video, since this is the kickoff of my circle training program, the We Heal for All Circle model training program, I wanted to come on and do a live where we just create space for any questions that you have in order to get a better feel, a better sense of if the training is the right fit for you. And so what I'll do over this next, 15 minutes or so is share some common questions that I get about the training, as well as see if any questions come in the comments section. So please feel free, drop them below, and I'll get to them as we hang out here on this live. And this is part of this kickoff week and part of the special promotional offer that I have going on for a limited time, where you can save a bunch of money and have access to a full year's access to the training, which is really, an awesome thing to have, because folks have been saying that they really like going through it one time and then being able to come back and check out different references, different resources, really sit with some of the reflection prompts in more detail. So it's definitely a worthwhile thing to have access to, and not to mention then you have access to a full year's worth of office hours, which happen every 2 weeks. And I'm kind of getting into some of the questions that I have lined up for us here already, but please take advantage of that. Check that out. Reach out if you have any questions about that, because that offer will stand until tomorrow, Thursday at midnight. So please check it out if you feel interested in it. And so, I'm going to just dive into some of these questions. Like I said, these are some common questions that I have gotten and that I get about the circle training, as well as some questions that were submitted specifically for this video. So let's dive in. So the first question I've got here is, what is the circle model like? What's it based on? Great question. It's a great question. Why do I want to be trained in something if I don't know what it is? So the We Heal for All Circle model is a model of gathering and community that uses meditation or internal awareness exercises, as well as storytelling, and then resonance practice or embodied empathy, and a particular type of resonance practice at that, to support people to share openly and listen empathically to each other's personal lived experiences around the changes going on in the world. Whether we're talking about the climate crisis, talking about racial, economic, social injustice, whether we're talking about uncertainty about the future, or any of the other myriad changes that are going on in the world and that bring up very normal feelings for those of us who are called to take action. So the model itself is based on, has several different influences to it. But one of the primary ones is a healing-centered approach to emotional processing, or a healing-centered approach where emotions are really central to the experience, right? Coming into our emotions, connecting with our emotions, and creating the conditions for that to take place, right? And what's so cool, maybe you've checked out the video that I did with a niece most recently. There's like a whole host of information and research that we have about what emotions are and how best to support them. And that field within the space of clinical psychology is healing-centered modalities or healing-oriented modalities. So the circle model, there's a lot of practices of emotional mindfulness, of again, embodied empathy, which is different than the more cognitive empathy, right? Where we actually, our mirror neurons fire, and we notice when our mirror neurons are firing when we're listening to somebody else's story, somebody else's experience. And a couple other things is that the model it's trauma informed, so that connects with the healing oriented approach. It's socially inclusive. It practices an alternative paradigm of learning and of coming together in community to learn and to discuss and to share. And in that way, it's also really supports emergent ways of exploring things. So it's not about there being an answer, like one answer that everyone's going to walk away with. It's really about coming together in community and co-creating an experience where the group's collective wisdom can really emerge. So let's go on to the next question. Hopefully that gave you a bit of a better sense of what to expect. So who is this training for? Who would benefit from this training? Who's already in the training? Another really awesome question. So the circle training is designed for change makers and community builders. Hey there, Lauren, welcome. Good to see you. I'm talking about the circle training and just answering some questions that I get, some common questions that I get about the training. And this next one is, who's this for? And the circle training is really for anyone who's feeling called to facilitate community-based emotional processing with their people, who are seeing a need amongst their colleagues, amongst their peers, amongst their clients for more constructive and connection-oriented ways of holding space for the changes going on and figuring out how to make sense of that for each of us as unique individuals. Hey there, Edgars, welcome. So these are change makers like community builders, folks who already have a community that they're building. Maybe it's a newer community and they want to integrate the circle model as an ongoing event that takes place within their community setting. These are the trainings for coaches and yoga teachers who already have students that they care for, that they teach. They have a coaching program that they're already offering. And the circle model helps them create more value for their clients, for their students, for their people, by offering them another type of practice, another ways of going about doing this. Oh yeah, Lauren just said, I would love to incorporate this into wombs. I could absolutely see that. Lauren has a company for all about birthing, all about supporting women in their birthing journey, their birthing process, and doing it in a really conscious way. Shout out to Wombs. That's exactly right. You know what I mean? It's people who are going on a journey, people who are in transition. And let's be real, we are in a constant state of transition as a world. So this model can really be used in a whole host of ways. And that's the way it was designed too. From the beginning, I designed it with the intention and the hope and the vision for it really to be adaptable and something that can be taken and, that you can just make your own, right? You can put your own unique spin on and really cater it to your unique needs, because we all have so many different needs. Each community has different needs. So yeah, just in this question, a couple more shout outs of who this is for. Nonprofit workers, folks in social enterprises, folks in companies who work on behalf of these different global and cultural issues that we're addressing as a world, really to reduce burnout, sustain engagement, really be a place of support for the very many ups and downs that come with this type of work and come with this kind of engagement. So that's a great question. So next up, the question that I got is, how is it set up? So what's, the structure and the format of the training? So the training program is self-paced and it's hosted in Mighty Networks, a platform called Mighty Networks. If you haven't experienced Mighty Networks yet, it's very, very cool. It's like its own personal private Facebook, essentially, which is really nice. So there's a lot of community engagement. The training itself has its own private community. And throughout the training program, there are a bunch of different reflection exercises that really invite you, again, in the spirit of co-creation, invite you as the participant to share your wisdom, share the resources that you're connected with, because most likely you're already doing some type of healing-oriented practices with your people, with yourself, that you're tapped into, and we want to learn about that. We want to learn from that. And so a lot of great opportunities to be able to co-create wisdom and share resources. The training program also includes office hours that happens every 2 weeks, group coaching calls where you come, you ask your questions, you can practice facilitation tools, you can hear what other people are doing, talk out your plans. And then there's also tools and templates for you to take and use as is, right? A ready to use set of tools that you can take and just bring, whether it's the circle agenda itself with already like things timed out. So if you don't even have to do math in the moment, right? You're like, okay, 5 people here. That means 2 minutes for the first round, 1 minute for the second round, boom, ready to go. So yeah, and with this promotion right now, if you join by tomorrow at midnight, you also get some additional one-on-one support. So that's a little extra bonus there. So this next question is a really, really awesome one, and it actually requires like so much more time. And we get into this in the program itself, and I'm also going to be doing another course about this in the future. But it's this question of how does anti-racism, racial justice, and decolonialization factor into the circle model? And there's 2 different ways that I want to answer this question. The first one is that in the circle training and in the model itself, there are some concrete tools that you'll receive. Things like land acknowledgements. What is a land acknowledgement? The history and significance of land acknowledgements. How to facilitate a land acknowledgement. Another example is the use of identity-specific spaces. You know, when is that appropriate? How do I discern whether or not to offer an identity-specific space? When is it valuable to offer a mixed identity space? The course also includes information and considerations for how to make the space accessible to all sorts of different needs, whether it's financial needs, needs related to different types of disabilities or differently abled individuals and groups and needs, and then also needs and differences around technology, whether it's different technological skills. You know, we're all at different levels with using things like Zoom or these different platforms, or even like considerations around bandwidth, what to do if somebody doesn't have a strong internet connection, how to make sure that they are equally connected, feeling connected and able to participate, and all that other good stuff. And then there's also just some exercises, an example of exercises for processing racial and social injustice, economic injustice, that you can take and use or use as inspiration. And then there's this whole other dimension of how decolonial, or even I like to think of as feminine with a capital F, approaches are really at the center of this circle model. And what I mean when I say that is that the model itself is really designed to be a place to practice and play with a different paradigm of relating, and a different paradigm of power dynamics, and even welcoming in and celebrating and learning from different types of intelligences as well. So the first example, maybe you're like, what do you mean by that? So I'll bring it down to earth a little bit. So one of the concrete ways to describe this is that the circle model is horizontal in nature. So if we think about colonization, if we think about things like racism and prejudice and patriarchy, right, there's an inherent power dynamic within all of these things, which is top down, which is the majority subjugating a minority, right? And what we do in Circle is we practice a horizontal paradigm of relating where everybody has equally timed shares, where the facilitator is an equal participant, and where everyone's wisdom is equally valued and equally celebrated. Again, like I was saying earlier, this isn't the type of space where one person has all the answers and everybody else is going to receive it, right? Again, that power dynamic of that often happens within traditional education settings, traditional like teacher-student relationships, right? There's a person in a position of authority who has the answers, who's going to give it to you. Instead, this is about everybody having wisdom to offer and setting up the conditions to be able to receive from that wisdom and celebrate that wisdom. So another example of how a decolonial or a feminine with a capital F, you can even consider it feminist approach, is just at the basis and the core of this circle model, is that it's a very embodied practice where we are inviting ourselves to engage with topics that we often strictly engage with, or the majority of the opportunities we have to engage with things like the climate crisis, with injustice, with about what's going on in the world, is through the left brain engagement, right? We debate, we research, these logic-driven approaches, which are dope, don't get me wrong, they're awesome, we really need them. And what we do in Circle is we move outside of the mind, we move outside of the rational thinking and practice coming into our bodies, into our hearts, and sharing from this other type of wisdom, this other type of intelligence, actually even tapping into and practicing being and sharing this different type of intelligence, the intelligence of the heart, the intelligence of the spirit, the intelligence of our bodies. And the last little one that I'll share within this conversation of how anti-racism and racial justice and decolonial practices are just baked into the circle model is that we really practice through guidelines for listening and sharing, not dominating each other. And this connects with all the different things that I've already shared, but no one's going to tell you what you can say, what to think, anything like that. We agree to not do that, right? And another example of this is we agree to not give unsolicited advice, right? We really allow each person to just have their own experience, and we practice that emotional mindfulness of noticing our own experiences, right? And tapping into that information. So that's just such an awesome question. And again, I'm going to do a fuller course on that too in the future. So last question here, unless there's any questions that are coming in the comments, is do I offer scholarships? And the answer is yes. I've got a handful of different scholarships each season that are available. I never want money to be a deterrent to accessing these courses, this training, the circles, anything like that. And I also recognize that where we invest our money, our attention follows. So I have scholarships available to folks who are really eager and committed to join and participate, and in particular folks who come from low-income backgrounds or from the global south, for lack of a better term. So please reach out, and I'd love to chat about that as well. Cool. And the last question here, I know I psyched you out. I said that was the last question, is how do I know if this is the right fit for me? And that's such an awesome question. A way that you can just get a little bit of a sense and dip your toe in is to join my free online community and check out the Circle Starter Kit that I have up there. So this gives you a sense of the Circle arc. It offers some prompts around global and cultural change that you can take and use today, as well as a little bit of information about, that flow, that arc, inviting people to connect with themselves before they connect with each other, using a community agreement and stuff like that. So thank you so much for tuning in and for being in relationship with me. I'm very, very grateful to that. If you have any questions, please reach out. And I look forward to being in touch from my home to yours. I'm sending you a lot of love. Thanks so much.